Hey, it's Amanda Green here, and I am doing a different video today, and I've taken some notes because I was sitting here last night feeding Cohen and sort of got some tips in my head that I wanted to share. So this video is tips to help stop nighttime cluster feeding as soon as possible when you're breastfeeding, because we all need our sleep at nighttime, and sitting up for hours on end, going from one boob to the other, burping, etc. Just doing that routine can be quite stressful and very draining. And when you've got to get up the next day and deal with other kids and all sorts of everyday stuff, you really need to be in the best possible shape that you can be. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tips, and they're just written down on a little envelope that I scribbled in the dark in the middle of the night last night. So don't mind me if I'm looking down and going, what is that? I just wanted to share while and I've just finished feeding Cohen here, and having a little bit of burping, sort of rubbing snuggles time as you do. So I thought I would do that while I talk to you. I was going to try to show you some of the actual physical techniques that I was using, but yes, apparently my boobs breastfeeding him could be quite controversial, so I just thought I'd keep it PG. So my number one tip is set yourself up before you start. So as a little bit of a routine, and I know this is not going to work for everybody, and I'm certainly no means of an expert, this is just what works for me. A little bit of a routine that my husband and I have gotten into already is that when the baby wakes up for his sort of like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock feed, I will go to the toilet, I will, stack my cushions up, etc., and get everything, my water bottle where I want it to be, so I am prepared. And my husband will obviously do the nappy change and everything and all that sort of stuff. So tip number one is set yourself up before you start, before you even go to bed. Like if you go to bed at 9 o'clock and you know that the baby's going to have you up at 12, have your cushions ready, have your water bottle ready, so all you got to do is get up and pee, your partner or, whoever, if you've got to do everything on your own, so be it, but try to set yourself up as best you can. My tip number two is don't stress. And I know that it's hard not to be stressing about, all sorts of things as the day, just your general daily stuff. It's so easy just to stress, and it's not good for milk production at all. And when you're tired and you just want to go back to sleep, it's really hard not to sort of get frustrated. So my part of that tip of the not stressing is keep calm. So everything happens as fast as it can happen, because we all know that stress and milk production affect each other. So my other tip is in that nighttime feed, the baby can quite easily sort of, doze off, during the actual feeding, process, I guess. So, so that's what I like to do is I like to play with him. And I don't mean, woo, wake up, play. I mean, gently stroke his cheeks or under his chin, or even just sort of rubbing the top of my breast. That's sort of just creating enough vibrations not to make it simple sailing when we're getting his mail. Not to, he's got a big ass. Not to make it, so he doesn't doze off. Just not to overly stimulate, but just stimulate him enough so he is actually awake to take as much milk in as he possibly can. So, so that's another tip. So that's tip number one, set yourself up before bed. Tip number two, don't stress. Tip number 3, keep the baby awake as long as you can for the duration of the feed. You know, maybe when, you know, you're on the second breast and, you know, he's been on there for a while, it might be okay to sort of, you know, let him doze off. But I like to get maximum food into him so he sleeps for as long as possible, especially over night time. So I just, you know, stroke his cheeks, rub under his chin, whatever I can do to keep him awake and attentive on the job at hand. So, tip number 3, keep the baby awake. Tip number 4, get rid of all gas. So we might sit here for 10-15 minutes, you know, rubbing, having a little bit of a cuddle, which I know when you're half asleep and it's the middle of the night, you just want to like go quick, get rid of that gas. But in my experience is if the baby goes down with even a little bit of gas in them, you know, like 5 minutes after they're down, they've perked up and they're awake and they you know, wake up because they're uncomfortable. They've got gas to get rid of, you know, like, so get rid of gas before you put them down. So don't rush that part. And see, we're wriggling here. We've got a bit of gas happening. Mummy's not concentrating at the job at hand. Okay, let's go. Let's get it out. Okay, so cute. Okay, so take 5 is my next tip. Take 5 minutes after you've got them down, and whether that's to fill in a feed log, pee, get a drink of water, just 5 minutes to yourself before you go lay back down to make sure they are well and truly settled, rather than lay down straight away because you're that knackered, you doze off, and then like in 2 minutes time, 5 minutes time, just after you dozed, you know, they've got you awake again yelling because they've, you know, got gas or whatever. You just haven't taken the time to make sure that they're properly settled. And, you know, I don't know about you, but if I lay down and am woken in like 5 minutes, I feel like so crappy. So to avoid that, just dozed off, been woken up, crappy feeling, I just like to take 5. And like I said, I pee, you know, I might write down a little bit about, you know, like last night it was literally these points that I was thinking of while I was feeding him. So yeah, I just take 5 just to make sure he's well and truly out of it before, you know, like I go back to sleep myself. So yeah, so and my last tip, so that's is enjoy it. I know it sounds kind of silly because nobody likes getting up in the middle of the night. We all like our sleep, but we need to remember also that they are not going to be little for very long, and you know, maybe 6 months, 12 months down the track, even, you know, 2 years for people that get up through the night for that long. You know, it's not you know, a really long time in the grand scheme of things, and they do grow up so quickly. And I don't know, just this being our last, it seems all the more important than before to really enjoy these sort of small, well, not small, but special moments, and yeah, get in those extra snuggles and stuff when we can. So yeah, they're my tips for helping to stop the nighttime cluster feeding being a horrendous experience. So set yourself up before bed. Tip number 1, don't stress out, keep calm. Tip number 2, get rid of gas is tip number 3. Keep the baby awake, so play with them, rub their little cheeks, you know, those sorts of things. Just gentle is tip number 4. Tip number 5 is take 5 after, so fill in a log or something, you know, just make sure they're well and truly settled so you don't doze and lay down, etc., and then get woken back up. And tip number 6 is actually enjoy it. Enjoy this time, special time. And I did have a tip number 7 down here, but I've written it sideways, so I'll just check my notes. Yeah. It's the same tip as what I said. To keep the baby awake. So even before you start, make sure obviously the change bum happens. You go pee, husband does it, etc. So those are my 7 tips for helping to stop nighttime cluster feeding being so horrific. And we're going to go get the rest of our gas out now and go to bed. And yeah, this is 7 days old, people. 7 days old, baby number 4, Cohen. And he's just perfect. Take care, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Oh, I've got to turn it off now. One-handed.